Hi, welcome to this video. This should only be about 3 minutes long, but somebody was kind enough to ask on YouTube, one of the comments, and the team got them to reach out to me about reusing biosensors. So a lot of this is opinion, so I just want to kind of be careful about that because making absolute comments on whether you can reuse biosensors is too broad a question, but I'll give you some opinion on this. Now, there's basically a research element to biosensors, and then there's developing commercial products. So when it comes to developing commercial products, I've got a couple of biosensors here. I've got the glucose strip in front of me, and I've also got a CGM in front of me as well. So when it comes to the CGM, I know I will get into the research element as well. But first of all, to say, just with the CGM, you have this kind of sensor. This sensor goes within the interstitial fluid and remains on the body for something like 15 days. So you can really strongly understand that it's not a good idea to have a sensor that's otherwise been in intimate contact with the body reused. If you're trying to commercially do this and sort of, you're trying to come up with a cleaning protocol, and then you've got to, you've really got to convince the regulatory authorities that in fact this sensor is actually safe to put back onto the human body. Now I can give a much more obvious example here of that you can't necessarily reuse biosensors, especially when it comes to commercialization. Mind the tools. I'm just doing a quick bit of let's say tinkering here, but I do have a glucose strip here. I'm just going to take a quick sample here. Just going to get hold of the sample here, right, and then I'll put it onto the sensor. Now the reason I do that is you can absolutely understand that actually to even get that blood sample off that sensor without damaging the sensor itself is I don't want to say nigh or impossible, but that's because absolutes in science and engineering is, but I don't think it's even commercially and regulatorily a very good idea to actually develop a product where you were expecting to recycle that biosensor. So I generally don't think, in commercial respect, it's a good idea to think that one's going to be able to develop a wearable biosensor like a CGM, where that sensing element is within the interstitial fluid and you're going to reuse it. I don't think it's a good idea when you're developing point of near patient devices like this, where that's an intimate contact. Getting my blood off that and reusing it seems like a really big challenge, not just technically but also regulatory wise as well. But let me carry on with a few other comments, because sometimes when people ask the question, can I reuse a biosensor, they may actually be talking about the research phase. So at Zero Peacock, we do have and I'll try and put links underneath this video. We do have a lot of enzymatic sensors, glucose, lactate, alcohol. Intrinsically, you can reuse these sensors, but let me get to a nuance on that. It very much helps if you are actually using our electronics. The reason being is, the wrong electronics can end up damaging sensors, but you can reuse sensors, but I'm going to put a nuance on that. Same with ion-selective electrodes that we do. You can reuse these types of sensors. Any kind of links, and I'll get the links as well. We prefer if you use our electronics, either our OEM solution or our Sense-It-All platform. So one of the problems that happens in biosensing is people really are reinventing the wheel constantly, and all they're really doing is delaying their time to market. Y Combinator have a good philosophy, which is find your first 10 customers, find your first 100 customers, find your first 1,000 customers. Don't spend all the time in the world doing engineering and then try and find customer number one. It's like, no, actually test out that market first. And with that said, with ZP, yes, you can reuse our sensors. And in fact, we even have a biosensor rinse solution with the idea that you can rinse the sensors and reuse them. Now, there's a lot of nuance around this, and the reason I'm going to put that is, along with can I reuse my sensors, we get the question, how long will they last and how many times can I use/reuse them? And the answer is it's pretty tricky, because we don't always control the electronics that people are using. But if you're using ours, then fair enough, you've removed that. We certainly do not control the solutions that you're putting on there. And people say, well, it might be blood, it might be urine, it might be soil. I say, yeah, sure. But genuinely, those are your samples, and whether the urine, the blood, the interstitial fluid, etc. That is something that you are putting on there. So ZP doesn't have control on those wetted solutions. So, and then we certainly don't have control on what I call the applications. People are really looking for that kind of security. Can I reuse it for soil monitoring? Can I reuse it, let's say in a military type application? Can I use it in a medical application? How many times can I use it? And there's too many parameters outside of like a manufacturing company like ZP. If I make a glucose sensor, how it's going to behave with your sample in your application, that really is something that we can't necessarily predict. So I think everyone is looking for this kind of certainty that by describing their application that we can therefore give them certainty. But the true answer is, in science and engineering, the true certainty is you have to try it. Is the quick answer. So again, this is a kind of if I put a picture up, it's just to kind of say this is quite an opinion piece from me. Is it a commercially good idea to develop a sensor that is reusable? I generally, especially with biological samples and human biological samples, I think it's a commercially and regulatorily a pretty bad idea. Can you reuse a ZP sensor? Yes, you can. We reuse our sensors. Then there's the real question: can you reuse a ZP sensor in my application? And that we get is one of the highest frequency inquiries we get. And generally, I can't sit and say it's going to how long and how many times you can reuse it, because that sample and that application is your sample and your application, and really you do actually have to try it. If you have questions regarding ZP and the reuse of sensors, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Okay, thanks very much.